And welcome to the 2020 Toronto EcoFair. My name is Helen Marsh, and I am one of the many volunteers working behind the scenes to bring you today's much anticipated event. Being a virtual event, you may be joining us from the Toronto area, elsewhere in Ontario, elsewhere in Canada, or even internationally, which is so exciting for us this year. The event you'll enjoy today is part of a 4-week celebration of the start of a green new decade. Climate scientists have given us 10 years to turn things around. There are solutions, awesome people, groups, and businesses making amazing progress. So let's all celebrate their achievements, learn about solutions, imagine what we can do, and be inspired to take action. We are very excited about today's program and thankful to the organizers and presenters who have volunteered to make it happen, and to you for joining us. We would like to begin by acknowledging and thanking the Indigenous peoples of this land. We are hosting this event today from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. This is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, we respectfully share this land acknowledgement as a way to recognize the enduring presence and resilience of Indigenous peoples for time immemorial. We also ask participants to reflect on how we are all accountable to these relationships. So thanks again for joining us. Now let's get the program started. Together we can make this a green new decade. So let's celebrate, learn, enjoy, and take action. I'd now like to hand the session over to our moderator for this evening, Paul Ansa. Paul is a retired professor of social science from York University. He was the founding chair of the Toronto Climate Action Network and is currently chair of Toronto's Green Neighbours Network. Paul, please take it away.
Thanks, Helen, and welcome everyone to our EcoFair webinar on home energy, the path to net zero. Many of us are pretty concerned about climate change, but sometimes we're not so sure what we can do to make a difference. If you've been attending other sessions of this EcoFair, you've already seen that there are lots of things we can do, both individually and in groups. Tonight, we'll be looking at one especially big way of making a difference for those of us lucky enough to be homeowners. We can get busy trimming back all that energy we waste, keeping our homes warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and heating up the planet in the bargain. If we do this properly, we can make a lasting difference, since more efficient homes will go on being that way, saving money for us and carbon emissions for our planet long after we finish the job. Great, you might say, but it doesn't sound easy. How do we start? Where do I begin? What really matters? How far can we go? Can we get advice somewhere, or maybe some financial help? What if we teamed up with our neighbors? Those are some of the questions we'll be looking at today. In the remainder of this first hour, we'll be listening to presentations by 3 experts on home energy savings. They are, first of all, Stuart Dutfield, who is a program manager with the City of Toronto's Environment and Energy Division. Stuart is part of a team working to scale up residential energy retrofitting in support of Transform TO, the city's climate change action plan. He was previously a project lead for the city's climate, he was previously a project lead for resilience, where he led Toronto's application to join the 100 Resilient Cities Network. Secondly, we'll be hearing from Greg Rebate, who is a building science laboratory technician at Ryerson University. Greg has over 20 years of experience in the building science field with specializations in energy efficiency design, high performance homes, and diagnostics. Our third panelist, Paul Dowsett, is a founding principal architect at the firm Sustainable and a pocket green guru with the Pocket Change Project. As a leading thinker in sustainability and architecture, Paul is an advocate for bringing sustainable architectural design to center stage of the built environment with design that is simple, sensitive, and sustainable. Having heard from our speakers, we'll move to a panel where they can respond to your questions. This is where all of you come in. As you listen to our speakers, please send us your questions. It's easy. If you look over on the right side of the screen, think a little lower down, you'll see a chat button. Just click on that and type in your question. So let's go to our speakers. First, to frame our discussion today, I'd like to ask Stuart to tell us about the size and nature of the energy challenge we face as a city, with a very sizable stock of older, leaky, drafty, energy wasting, single-family homes. Stuart, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you everyone for joining us on this slightly frostier Thursday than usual. I'm just going to bring up my screen here. One moment. Naturally, it just wants to get me now, doesn't it? I'll figure it out, folks. There we go. Let's try this again. Okay. I promise we did actually check this. We did this in the check. Oh.
You got screen share on?
I do indeed. It's not choosing the screen, but we'll get it there. I think we got it.
Looks like it's on its way.
There we go. And okay, we've hopefully worked out the kinks. So here we go. The bureaucrat has finally figured out the kinks for everyone. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for having us. I think, you know, I've wasted too much of your time kind of showing you the technical failings on my part. But I think what we want to do really quickly is really just give you a high-level sense of what, you know, the scale of the problem is. So, you know, why the city declared a climate emergency, and at a really, really high level, a picture of that housing stock and where emissions are coming from in Toronto. So, you know, this is the overall picture of emissions in Toronto. So about 52% of our emissions are coming from buildings, which is significant. The balance of that is made up of waste and, you know, 38%, again, fairly significant, coming from transportation. Now, if you dig a little deeper into these numbers, we find that about 36% of our emissions are coming from commercial and institutional buildings, 13% from industrial facilities, and 51% from residential properties. So that currently also includes multi-unit residential properties, but a single family home, which we, you know, sort of define as a row house, a townhouse, etc., is, you know, it's a massive component of that. And it's really imperative that we begin to get everyone on a path to reduce emissions from that type of housing. So what's our framework for operating and doing that? It's Transform TO, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. Transform TO is the city's climate action strategy, and it's focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050, while creating a low carbon future for Toronto that is healthy, equitable, prosperous, and benefits all. Now, in terms of buildings, well, what does that mean? Well, we have a lot of goals, but as it relates to those existing buildings, it basically means we have to retrofit every single one of them to be net zero before 2050. It's no small undertaking. So, you know, I think with that in mind, given the seriousness of the matter, in October of last year, City Council unanimously voted to declare a climate emergency and accelerate its efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And that's really what's driving some of our efforts at getting to scale on some of these challenges. The last thing I'll say before wrapping up is really just, I want to give you a sense of the scale for Toronto's housing stock. So we roughly have about 421,000 single family homes in the city. That's a lot. It's a lot of homes. Once you consider that 74% of those homes were also built prior to the 1970s, and many of which are due for upgrades, it sort of compounds how challenging this problem can be. Now, the other thing about this is, you know, thanks to some research from the Canadian Urban Sustainability Practitioners Network, we also know that about 6.2% of those homes require some major repairs. You know, there's huge energy poverty considerations within this, huge equity considerations we need to think about. As Paul said, For those who are lucky enough to own a home, it can still be very challenging in an expensive city like this. So I will close it there by saying, yes, the challenge is significant, but the opportunities are also equally, if not more so, exciting and significant. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stuart. That certainly does look like a tall order. Where to start? I guess meeting it still has to happen one home at a time, so maybe that's the place to look next. What is actually involved in doing a deep energy reno in an older home? Where would you begin? For an answer to that question, let's turn to Greg, our building sciences expert from Ryerson. Greg, what can you tell us? What would you see as the first priority for anyone wanting to increase the energy efficiency of their home?
Good evening, Paul. Yeah, the first thing, as I say, the first thing really to do in this case is just to simply recognize, thinking back to Stuart's stats, 74% of houses built prior to 1970. That's a lot of successive owners who have fiddled with a house, put on little warts, little additions on the back, put on a covered front porch. All this to say that my experience in doing home energy audits, I worked with a company called GreenSaver for a dozen years that piloted the Energy Guide for Houses program here in the city of Toronto. It's important to recognize that every house is like a fingerprint. They're incredibly unique. Yes, you can make generalizations about certain neighborhoods, bungalows, story and a halves. But really, trust me, every house is completely unique. And my advice to anyone who is considering doing any renovation or upgrades to their home, they should really start with a home energy audit. And the process is pretty simple. Through the City of Toronto, you can contact Home Energy. I'm sure they've got a list of approved home energy auditors that can come out or can at least refer you to home energy auditors. Typically, the process involves somebody coming to your house, measuring the skin surface area of the house, and just like a fabric of a coat, you lay all the pieces down, and you do an accounting of all the different pieces, all the different components, the insulation levels, the air tightness of the building. They'll do a blower door test on the building. They'll measure all of the windows and input the style of window or the efficiency of the rough efficiency of the window. And they'll look at the mechanical systems, the ventilation system, if there is any. A lot of our old houses don't really even have ventilation systems. And if they do, they're what Joe Stebert calls suck-only ventilation. So, point source exhausts only in bathrooms, if you're lucky, and usually only over the kitchen range. Hopefully, if you've got a gas stove, you've got at least that kind of exhaust. So really, a home energy auditor is the first place I would start. They take all that information, do a big number crunch in specialized software, and they provide a customized report to your house. And really, I think I can't emphasize it enough. I think it's the best place to start. I don't know if that answers your question, Paul. Or
yeah, that's very interesting. And so, I mean, what you really are suggesting is that since every home is a little different or even unique, you've got to have a way of assessing what's the right thing to do in your home. But sure. I wonder, just bearing that in mind, if we were to still look at the homes that are out there, like what are the sort of typical kinds of homes that there are? What are the most common, and what are the most common kind of upgrades that you see?
Paul, you're asking me to contradict exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
Yes, we can make some generalizations. Yeah. Every house is unique, but yes, so you're right. There are some generalizations we make. So, for instance, a lot of the old brick houses in Toronto, the double brick houses, typically they're not insulated. Typically, they tend to be super air leaky. If I was to show you a bar chart of the heat loss or the energy loss through all of the walls in some of these old double brick houses versus air leakage, which, Paul, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What do you think would be the biggest heat loss? Would it be energy losses through the walls, or would it be through air leakage?
Oh, don't tell me now. Don't tell me. I'm gonna bet on air leakage.
Ah, bing, 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 bing. You won. Good job. So yeah, air leakage is usually the number one sink for heat loss in houses. So, I could feel, I've got a double brick house in the High Park area. And yeah, sure enough, the cobbler's shoes, as they say, I've insulated the main floor and the basement, but I haven't gotten around to the second and third floor, which is where all the bedrooms are. And of course, the thermostat is on the main floor, sending the message back to the thermostat saying, or the furnace saying, hey, everything's fine. And we end up freezing on the top floor, top two floors. So really,
sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, so a lot of these, the double brick homes, you see them all over the place. Really, the renovations tend to be a little bit more involved. Maybe Paul Dowsett will speak to it. He's retrofitted a number of deep energy retrofitted a number of homes. Some of the older Victorian houses in the city of Toronto might be, if you're lucky, wood framed, and if they're wood framed, you can actually do quite a bit with not as much money. You can dense pack the walls with cellulose. It's one of the only products that the government of Canada actually endorsed in terms of a retrofit technique. It's a pretty benign substance, and it's using basically you're sequestering all of the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail into your walls. So a great place to make your house a little bit more airtight, and certainly stop the heat escaping through the walls. So yeah, moving through, Scarborough, Etobicoke, those neighborhoods were built, if you look at Stuart's map, you can see older, the older pockets. It kind of breaks down geographically the age of homes. Certainly in the periphery around the M postal code, you tend to have houses built after the world, between World War I and World War II, and after the war, and certainly after the war, there's a lot of bungalows. The style where, in Toronto, downtown Toronto, the talls tend to be tall and columnar, and they get a lot of stack effect, which leads them to lose a lot of energy through air leakage. Whereas the squatter homes in Etobicoke or Scarborough tend to not get as much air leakage, and adding insult to injury, the style of construction is actually a little bit more airtight. So they tend to have a little bit more moisture issues, that kind of thing. So those are the kinds of generalizations that we kind of make. So the implicit bias, like when I walk up to a house, I look at a house and I say, oh, that house built in 1980, they gave me a call for an energy audit, and I know that they've got a room above the garage, and I know right away they're going to complain about the room above the garage because that room's far from the furnace and it's not controlling the heat, and it also loses heat through all 5 sides of the box. So if you take a box, it'll lose heat through the floor, through the sides, through the top, and only the attached part at the back, where it's attached to the rest of the house, will it be a heated wall. So accelerated heat loss in those types of houses. So yeah, it varies quite a bit. Insulation wasn't really introduced into buildings until the 70s, and really anything from the the early 70s and before, they tend to be more involved in terms of retrofitting, especially if it's a solid masonry house, and or if you have walls that have been partially filled. If you have a wood framed house and the frame has been partially filled with like a craft style of insulation, paper bat insulation, which only does, a lot of times they didn't fill the full cavity, so they're really a half measure, and it's tough to retrofit cellulose in that narrow cavity. So yeah, those are the kind of loosey-goosey sort of things that I think about. it's also probably more important to really think of the hierarchy of energy retrofits. Really, you want to start with the cheap and cheerful and move up to the more complex and expensive. So on that base pyramid, for sure, the first thing you invest in is getting third-party information. You get an energy audit. Once you've done that, you change your light bulbs, you do all the stuff that you can do. Maybe you do a little bit of caulking. Once you've done the energy audit, they'll show you where your house air leaks. If you're nice, they can leave some little sticky notes where all of the air leakage is happening. They could do break it down for you. You can do all your own caulking in the house, weather strip doors, etc. And then you get into the more expensive stuff. Insulating attics. Next level would be insulating walls, insulating basements, so that more destructive kind of stuff. And once you've really, once you've taken the heat load of the house and you've shrunk it down to its most essential by having a really good building envelope, like a good winter jacket, at that point, and only at that point, do you switch in a higher efficiency heating plant. And hopefully you've made your house so airtight that you need a good ventilation system with heat recovery in it. Anyways, these are all big things that building scientists, contractors, homeowners, we have to grapple with over the next couple of years, and they're not easy. Trying to fit ductwork into a lot of these houses. People are afraid of bulkheads. Man, the list goes on. It's complicated. So getting some advice is probably a good place to start.
Okay, that certainly gives us a good picture of what's out there and some of the steps along the way. But now, what's at the other end of the rainbow? Like if you really decide to go for it and you're looking for something that's up there at the cutting edge of high performance homes, what's out there, and what could we aspire to if we're prepared to go all the way?
Yeah, it's a good question, and really, you've got a select few architects and designers and some design build guys who are at the forefront. Boutique firms like Paul Dowsett's a firm, he's going to speak in a few moments, who are really pushing the envelope. They're really pioneers who have put a lot of sweat equity in trying to figure out a lot of the detailing that goes into taking an old house with no air barrier system and somehow retrofitting an air barrier system into it and turning it into a super efficient house. So for the record, then after the oil embargo in the 70s, the Canadians researchers started playing with super efficient houses. And in Saskatchewan, they created something called the Saskatchewan Conservation House. And that house was really the impetus for developing the gold standard in the residential energy efficiency industry. Is, believe it or not, it's not Earthship. It's not the Earthship where you're refilling tires with concrete. It's actually the passive house. Passive house, then you've got R2000, net zero energy. We come down, Energy Star homes, and then you've got just the regular building code, built to the building code, which is not a bad house. It keeps on ratcheting up. The efficiency keeps getting ratcheted up. But truth be told, the building code is still the bare minimum. So if a contractor is telling you, just meet the building code, everything will be good, then you just know that you're getting the bare minimum. So that's why it's good to have a knowledgeable consultant, somebody like Paul, who can help really shepherd you through that really complicated. And I've tested a lot of houses, a lot of high performance houses in the neighborhood or in Toronto and outside of Toronto. So really, what's at the end of the rainbow? A lot of retrofits of houses, it is difficult to get to the passive, the German passive house or the North American passive house standard called FIAS. And I feel, after being involved in this in a number of over a number of years, that it's really not about getting a certificate for your house to say, look, I reached the passive house standard. But really, I think that the important thing for people to focus on is to really make sure that the performance gets baked in. And if your house is good enough, that's fantastic. but the key here is to use the principles of the Passive House program. So the energy modeling and all of the backing of information that comes with that program. Really, we're seeing some houses that really require very little heat. And I think Paul might talk a little bit about air source heat pumps. They're really at the cutting edge. And air source heat pumps, instead of using electricity, like almost everyone's seen electric baseboard. I'm ashamed to say I have an electric baseboard in this very room. And chugging away, I can hear the carbon. Oh, okay, well, it's Ontario, it's not so bad. But really, this type of heat where you're taking electricity and you're just through electrical resistance, you're creating a radiant heat into a room is the least efficient way to use electricity. The most efficient way to use electricity is to use a technology called a heat pump. And there's water source heat pumps and there's air source heat pumps. And what we're finding in high performance houses is to really just keep the mechanical systems, minimize it, try to have simple systems. And the best thing to do is to use an air source heat pump. Now, the catch with the air source heat pump is that your envelope, the heat loss in the house needs to be sized. You need to have a really efficient, super efficient house in order for these heat pumps to work well, because they tend to be smaller systems that only put out a little bit of energy. And so you have to match that with the house. So all this to say, Paul, long-winded answer. Sorry about that. You can do a lot, but it's a complicated process. And I mean, if anyone's got questions, either myself or Paul, or I'm sure any one of the panelists would be more than happy to answer questions. Well, I will be answering questions at the end of today, anyhow. So
that's great, Paul. That's great, Greg. And I think you've really laid out the big picture in a very comprehensive way. And you've also pointed ahead to the question of how do we create something that's really does go that far. And then if you do, of course, the question people will ask is how big a difference would it make? And can we maybe see some examples? It's a little hard to envision this all. It sounds a bit abstract. So for help with that, I'd like to turn to our green architect, Paul Dowsett. Paul, could you tell us about a couple of the home retrofits you've done and the kind of results you've gotten?
Hey, Paul. Sure. I gotta toss it back to Greg. Thanks, Greg, for the great setup and the very kind words. So, Paul, yes, I'd be pleased to show you a couple of examples that I think tell a pretty good story. So let's just get my screen up here, and we can talk about these. So this first house that we're showing you on Queen Victoria Street, this is actually my own house, and it was an early experiment. Before I was going to tell clients of mine that, oh yeah, sure, we can retrofit your very poorly built 1914 house, as seen on the left of the screen. That's the house and the condition it was when I bought it. And I took that as a challenge. I said, right, I want to energy retrofit this before I promise clients that I can do that. And with a whole bunch of strategies shown on the right-hand side of the screen, most of which you can't read here, but trust me, there were a lot of different things done with my own hands, done very economically, because as anybody who's ever bought a house knows, as soon as you buy a house, you're very poor, very suddenly. And so we did all these different things and managed to create a house that used 48% less energy than a typical Canadian home. And I thought that was a pretty significant number. Yeah. We completed this work back in 2007. It was a whole decade of work. And we also achieved a house that was cost of energy positive, because there are 5 kilowatts of solar power on the roof. We end up being cost of energy positive. We're not net zero energy, and we're not cost positive, and we're not net energy positive, but we are doing pretty well. then it turned around almost a decade later. Somebody near me had almost an identical house, just as poorly built in the first place, a little better maintained over its life, as you can see on the left. And they had seen what I did to my house, and they wanted to do similar things to their house. So again, just like my house, many strategies implemented. And on this house, we managed to achieve 83% energy reduction, lower than a typical Canadian house. Now we're really doing something significant, we thought. And this house also achieved the first Lead for Homes Platinum renovation in Toronto, which was a significant milestone. As Greg was also mentioning, he suggested I might talk about air source heat pumps. And absolutely, when we get down to a number like this of an 83% energy reduction, this house is very well air sealed. It is well insulated. It sips energy, and it is perfect for air source heat pump. And that is what is used to heat this house. So those are two examples, Paul.
Wow, that's amazing. What a difference. So I have to ask you, what was it that you learned in those 10 years between the first house and the second house, and what accounts for the difference?
I learned a lot of things. I think mostly what I learned was the importance of building scientists, people like Greg Rebate. I learned the importance of talking with building scientists early, with getting them to come into the house to do a home energy audit, as Greg talked about. And I think the biggest single difference in all of the work is actually air sealing. And again, this is what, hey, you got the right answer when Greg posed the question to you. The single biggest source of heat loss is air leakage through the walls, the roof, even the basement floor. So we need to concentrate on the air barrier, as Greg said. And the air barrier is a layer or a series of layers that must be carefully detailed to ensure that they are continuous around the whole house. As architects and building scientists, if we can't make it work on the drawings, then it's really unlikely that the contractor can make it work in the field. So we use what we call the red line test, and we basically trace a line over the air barrier all around the house. And if we can trace the line without lifting our pencil, then we know that it's pretty good. So that's in the design stage, the detailing stage. And then once the work has been done, nearing the end of the construction, we can actually test the air tightness before all the finishes are put on, both inside and outside. But when the contractor feels that they've established the air barrier, we can do a blower door test. So a blower door test was done in the beginning as part of the energy audit. And now we do another one here to make sure that there are no leaks in this newly established air barrier system. So we pressurize and we depressurize the house to test for outgoing and incoming leaks, because they are different. And we also do that test before the drywall is on, so that we can then seal any leaks that we find. And of course, also, as Greg mentioned, when we've achieved all this air tightness, we still need to provide fresh air. Older homes depend upon the cracks in the walls to let this fresh air in. And this is uncontrolled ventilation. But of course, we prefer controlled ventilation. So a heat recovery ventilator, or an energy recovery ventilator, HRV versus ERV, exhausts the stale air and brings in fresh air, mechanically controlled through this magic box that you see in the picture on the screen. And in the middle of that box, in that diamond-shaped thing, is where the magic really happens. So in the wintertime, the outgoing stale air is warm. It has heat from the house. The cold, fresh air coming in exchanges that heat on its way in. It takes the heat from the outgoing air and puts that heat into the fresh incoming air, and we exhaust cool stale air. In the summertime, the opposite happens, where we would be exhausting air-conditioned air, cooled air, and what happens, and then the incoming air would be warm. So that warmth from the incoming air gets transferred to the outgoing air, and the heat stays outside the house in the summer. The difference between a heat recovery ventilator and an energy recovery is that the energy recovery also deals with humidity. So it keeps the humidity inside the house in the winter and pushes that humidity back outside the house in the summer.
Well, that's fascinating, Paul. And it looks as though you've kind of got the secret of doing this, which certainly comes out in that second house, and which has so much to do with the idea of providing a good seal and controlling the inflow and outflow of air. But I also think now about what Stuart showed us, that immense supply we have in the city, this immense stock of older homes that will have to be renovated in something like this way. Could you ever scale something like this approach to whole neighborhoods? Or is it just something, a sort of custom job for people with the money to do one house at a time?
Well, thanks, Paul. I think the honest answer is a little bit of both. Yes, we absolutely have to scale this up. We don't have the time between now and 2050 to do this one house at a time. And yet the truth of the matter is, as Greg said, every house is unique. Everyone needs a custom, bespoke, tailored solution for it. But in the city of Toronto, there are enough houses that sort of belong to archetypes, like they are similar enough that we can develop some strategies. And Stuart was talking about the scale of this in the city of Toronto, and he said that we have 422,000 homes. My number was 450,000. I will bow to Stuart, but you're going to get the math for 450,000 houses. In Toronto, with 450,000 houses, we would need to complete retrofitting 60 of those every single working day for the next 30 years. That's 60 sounds like a small number across the city, but we have to complete 60 every single day. And it just compounds when you then look at Ontario or Canada. In Canada, we would need to retrofit 300 homes every working day for 30 years.
That's in Ontario.
In Ontario, I'm sorry. And across Canada, we'd need to retrofit 1867, a very poetic little number, 1867 homes every working day for 30 years. This is a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. The employment embedded into this and the material supply embedded into this is staggering. So we absolutely do need that workforce. In order to scale this, because I've been thinking about this for quite some time, we need four things, and we need four things simultaneously. They all have to exist at the same time. We need ready homeowners. We need homeowners who are ready to make this investment and disruption in their homes. So they need to be convinced that this is the right thing to do. And that's what a group of us are doing right now, that we have to do the convincing of the homeowners first. We also need a ready workforce. We need a workforce that knows what to do and is ready to do the work that needs to be done to all these houses. So there's another group I'm involved with that is actually developing the curriculum to train the workforce to do the work necessary. We also need a ready supply of materials, all those air barrier systems, all that insulation, all that new cladding on the outside of houses. We need all that material ready so that in the city of Toronto, we can complete 60 houses every working day. And of course, we need a ready method to pay for the work. That's the other thing that we need to have on hand, because homeowners won't be ready and the workforce won't be ready and the suppliers won't be ready if they are not all simultaneously convinced that there's a way to pay for all of this. So it's a classic chicken and egg problem. Every one of these four elements is needed simultaneously to enable the other three. So that's That's some of the scale of what needs to be done in order to make this a community-based or larger than one house at a time.
Well, it sounds like maybe the biggest challenge of those four would be getting homeowners ready to take this on. And it sounds like you're doing something along that line. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that is and how it's going.
Absolutely, Paul. So I live in a neighborhood in the city that's known as the Pocket. We're at the eastern edge of Riverdale in the east side of the city. And within the Pocket, we have a project that we've been working on for 4 years called the Pocket Change Project. And what we're looking to do is we are looking to make our community, our long range goal is to make our community net zero carbon. And we want to do that by 2050 in lockstep with the city's plans. And the Pocket Change Project is possible to contemplate because we've spent the last 20 years doing community building in our neighborhood. And because of that, in our neighborhood, we have many, many shared values to build upon, and those are listed on the slide here. We have a lot of socially conscious people. We're very welcoming. People very much want to partake in opportunities to make the Pocket a better place to live. Everybody has a great community spirit. And if you're living in a community that is not yet built and developed, hasn't done this community building and sharing of values, maybe not worry. As the old adage says, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. So I'm saying to everybody who's listening in tonight, start your community building now. If you didn't start it 20 years ago, well, start today. That's second best. And those two houses that I showed you at the beginning, my house is in the Pocket. The other one is very near the Pocket. And these and a number of other houses that our firm has worked on really serve as examples to the people in the Pocket of what can be done. And so we're starting at the grassroots community level to help our neighbors to understand why home energy retrofits are necessary, how they can be accomplished, who can do the work, and what financial help is available. So we're starting that work right now. Well, we actually started almost 4 years ago, but we're ramping it up right now to make sure that the push the push is really on with the neighbors to get this going. And overall, there are 3 major steps in our Pocket Change project. The first is to raise awareness and inspire action. And of course, that's exactly what we're doing right now. We're at the beginning. Once we pass step 1, we then want to actually get our neighbors to take action to conserve energy in order to reduce their greenhouse gas or their carbon emissions. And then this will allow us to switch to renewable energy. This will then, once we've done the work, once we retrofit the homes, once we've improved their air tightness, improved their insulation, then we can switch to renewable energy. Then we can switch to those air source heat pumps as were talked about earlier. And all of this is to create a sustainable community here in the Pocket. All along, we're working towards to be as sustainable as we can. In the next 30 years, we'll also be greening our transportation. We'll be greening our food sources to the Pocket, trying to really localize our food sources, and looking at many, many other aspects of our daily lives to create this totally sustainable community. Because we as a community want to do our part to help the city, to help the province, to help our great country of Canada, to all do their part. And we figure that because we started 4 years ago, we're out there in front, and we know that there's a tremendous responsibility there, that all of our learnings, both positive and negative, I'm sure we will have negative learnings, all of our learnings we're going to share with everybody else across the city, the province, the country. So thanks for asking those questions, Paul.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. That's absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure there will be lots of folks who will be interested in seeing how they can apply what you've learned to their own neighborhoods as well. You know, when I think about it, doing home energy renos as part of a community just seems to make so much sense. And it seems a lot easier than having to go it alone. If you weren't sure about something, you could always get help from your neighbors. And speaking of help, Stuart, I understand the city has come up with a number of new programs to help homeowners with some of the thornier aspects of the home energy reno process. Can you tell us about that?
Indeed, I'd be happy to, Paul, and thanks to the other Paul and Greg for setting it up so well. So let me see if I can do this screen share a little more successfully this time around. Okay. There we go. So hopefully you guys can see that. Here we go. I think it should be working this time. Great. So
can you go full screen, Paul?
I should. Let me try that again. Sorry, it should be. Let's try that. That should be full screen.
Yeah. Great.
Great. Thank you very much. Slightly less interrupted that time. So thanks again, folks, for having us. And yeah, really grateful for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we're doing. You know, very much part of a much bigger picture. Paul spoke to the work the Pocket is doing, which is, you know, it's really encouraging. We had a meeting with the Pocket and other groups a couple of weeks ago, and it's incredible to see the scale of neighborhood organization that's coming together. And I think that's really testament to the work of organizations like, you know, the Green Neighbors Network and how that has come together. And it's really sort of incubated these amazing projects across the city. So we're looking to support that the best way we can. One of the things we recently did is we started a project called Better Homes TO. And Better Homes TO is really intended to help homeowners, you know, provide a guide to sort of a comfortable and a more climate-friendly home. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, it really comes about through partnerships. So we're very lucky that Natural Resources Canada and the host of partners you see here have come together to support us in the work. And that, again, speaks to the sort of broader community of this. This is like a community effort to get this to scale. Better Homes TO itself is really focused on motivating and empowering homeowners to take action on climate change by improving the energy efficiency of their home. We want to help educate homeowners on the EnerGuide home evaluation and energy efficiency upgrades to get towards net zero. And I think it's about getting towards net zero. Net zero isn't something like Paul said, you do overnight. It requires science and thinking and thought and money. And you'll hear me talk a lot about is EnerGuide, is that it's a critical sort of first step in this process. The other thing we want to do, and we're happy to actually add on to this presentation a little today, is really help people find those supports, whether they're utility rebates or incentives or partners or communities they can connect with to start doing this work. So I think one of the things we really suggest to do is start with a home energy evaluation. And the best way to think about an EnerGuide for home evaluation is it's the nutrition label for your home. It's the liters per 100 kilometers on your car. And the way it works is, you know, you go out and you get a certified energy auditor to come out to your home, and they provide you with the energy audit. What is the current state of your home? And that is really a good jumping off point. It provides you with an action plan of recommendations, recommended energy efficiency upgrades. And then those evaluations are offered pre and post renovation. And the important thing about that is that for many programs, the home energy loan program included, and you know, utilities and incentives offered by rebates and incentives offered by utilities, you need to do that to qualify. It also allows you to see where your home stacks up against other homes. And it's not just sort of, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, but it really does give you a good picture of like, oh, you know, how did we work towards this? How do we go from 100 to a 0? And I think with this scale, and it's evolved a number of times, is really getting from the highest number to the lowest number you can get. Again, as Greg had mentioned, and Paul too, you know, this isn't something overnight. We're all about the quick wins, transitioning so to major renovations and deep retrofits. So what do we mean by the quick wins? So those are, as they have mentioned, the importance of air sealing, upgrading your lights to LEDs, replacing old appliances with Energy Star products when they become available. And these should be relatively low cost. When we start thinking about major renovations, what we try to talk to people about is, when you're thinking about, ripping down those walls or moving a wall, start thinking about where you put the insulation. We want to make insulation as exciting as granite countertops, really, because unfortunately, a lot of the stuff you don't see, but it has a massive impact on the air quality in your home, the sound quality in your home. I don't know if anyone can hear, but I have 2 kids running around right now in a 1920s home. I can personally hear everything. And then you transition into, replacing windows and doors. Once you've got that, those small to medium steps done, that's when I think we can start thinking about those larger steps, those deep retrofits. And again, like Paul and Greg said, that's when we can start thinking about how do we incorporate renewable energy, those really visible things that, save you money. And they are coming down in price exceptionally quickly. Battery storage is also something that is also dropping in price, and increasingly a lot of people are interested in. Lots of people have diesel generators, which are or diesel or gas generators, which can be actually quite expensive to maintain. Battery storage is growing in importance. And again, highly efficient building envelope systems and HVAC. HVAC, the thing we're really trying to talk about too, and make a lot more, conscious for people, is the incredible system that is an air source or a ground source heat pump. It really is an incredible piece of technology. Again, it looks like a box, but there's amazing things happening in that box that can save you a lot of energy and make your home a lot more comfortable. So to help folks do this, we've developed a website called Better Homes TO, betterhomesto.ca. You can also route through it through the city. We're on Instagram and all those fun things through LiveGreen. And it's intended to really give you a sense of what those upgrades are, help you understand what an air source heat pump is, what is insulation, how much does it cost. We try to demystify what a home energy evaluation is and link you to all the resources. We try to keep a current listing of all the rebates, and we also focused on making homes more resilient. So, how do we protect against flood damage, extreme weather, etc. So as a result of COVID-19, we'd hope to do a lot more engagement in person, and I'm really delighted to be participating in this virtually. One of the things we did most recently too, to kind of demystify some of these subjects, is we held a webinar series. It's all at the website. They're all recorded, and it kind of guides people through the process. And we've had a number of experts come in and speak to that. So we have one on planning your renovation, a step-to-step guide. We have another on the energy considerations for your renovations. We have a whole series on rebates and incentives. And then we also do a lot of deep dives into renovation technology, such as solar PV, heat pumps, and electric vehicles. So really encourage anyone thinking about doing this, to check out the videos. You don't have to obviously listen to the whole thing, but there's some really great insights from professionals who've done this work and can really offer you some good tips and tricks. Which is actually a great sort of segue to some of the resources we're trying to develop. We've got a number of guides we've put together. One of them is what we call our Better Homes Guide. And this is basically a fold out. I'll try to find an example. It's probably on my desk here somewhere. And it speaks to those 15 ways to make your home more efficient. How do you get started with an Anna guide? What are the renovation tips? And why should you do it? The other thing we've done is we've tried to make it as accessible as possible. And this is really something we're focused on in our team, is how do we begin to address, the equity considerations in a city as diverse and incredible as Toronto. So these are available in English, French, Chinese, Farsi, Portuguese, Spanish, Tagalog, Tamil, and Urdu. So we really want to start getting these materials out there. The other thing we've been doing through this program is providing training opportunities. So it's last year and this year, we actually trained 90 people with Humber College in home energy animator training. And we provided 2 days of free training to community animators and contractors and people working for utilities and energy efficiency related organizations to understand and demystify this. This is actually recently translated into a new program, which is a much more condensed version. This is the mini version. It's about 2 hours long, and we're doing that in collaboration again with Humber and Enbridge, who's sponsoring the program. For anyone who's interested, we actually have some spots available in a session this coming Saturday. So happy to share those links as well. Now, I saw, in looking at the live stream, people are very much interested in what supports are available out there. So I wanted to give everyone a chance to understand what some of them are. And I wanted to start with one of the sort of more lucrative programs that is out there. It is provided by Enbridge for gas heated homes, and it's called the Home Energy Rebate Program. Now, the program offers rebates of up to $5,000 for various energy efficiency upgrades, including high efficiency furnaces, basement, attic, exterior wall insulation, windows and doors, etc. And they also cover the cost of a Guide for home evaluation, which runs in the range of about $550 to $600. So it's a great package. It's running till the end of the year, and we've heard it's been extended into the new year, which is great. The nice thing about this program is you can actually stack the incentives and with financing through the city through our home energy loan program. Again, if this is a relatively easy one. If you're looking to have a better understanding of what's happening in your home, I have a product like this, which I really like because I don't have to get out of bed to change the thermostat. If I'm cold, I can turn it up. If I'm hot, I can turn it down. So smart thermostats, which are also subsidized through the Enbridge program. The other thing that's which is really good to see with programs like this is both the IESO and Enbridge have special programs for people on qualified income. So the home winterproofing program, I've known a number of people who've gone through this. It's a free program to qualifying homeowners, and it is income qualified. So it's worth phoning in and finding in about it. If in particular, if you're a senior or you're someone on a low income. So if you do qualify, you're eligible to receive attic, wall, and basement insulation, draft proofing, and a smart thermostat. So again, it's a great program. A number of seniors we know are taking advantage of it. And one of the reasons we've actually been partnering with Enbridge is just to promote it, because a lot of people don't know that these programs are out there. Another one that is also somewhat invisible at times is the in-store point of sale rebates for energy efficient products at participating retailers. Many of this is Roller, Home Depot, Canadian Tire. And essentially these are just direct rebates you'll get on your bill for washers and dryers, air purifiers, smart thermostat, mini split air conditioners, dehumidifier, and even electric vehicle home chargers. I went to buy a dehumidifier actually quite recently, and I looked at my bill thinking, oh, this isn't right, something's wrong. And it's because the government in Canada had actually just deducted $75 off my bill. So if you're thinking about new appliances, this is the time, because this money has been allocated, and once it runs out, it runs out. So, if you're thinking about something new, go energy efficient and save. The other program, again, that a lot of people don't know about is the Home Assistance program for qualifying homeowners. Again, it's geared to income, but it's a great program. It's worth filling out. We can send you the details, and it makes you eligible for free upgrades in terms of window air conditioners, additional attic or basement insulation, weather stripping, and doors. In particular, this is This is great for electrically heated homes in particular. So, apologies. Tech issues on my side. So how can we also help with this? So the city actually has a program itself called the Home Energy Loan Program. So the Home Energy Loan Program provides financing to homeowners interested in undertaking energy conservation, water conservation, and renewable energy works. It's available to single family homes, detached, semi-detached, or row houses, duplexes and triplexes, basically any home with a postal code M. And what homeowners can do is they can borrow from the city up to 10% of the current value of their home, up to a maximum of $75,000. We're actually hoping to increase this next year to $120,000 because we've seen an increase in the scale of projects we see coming through the program. Through the program, homeowners can choose their own contractors, and our team is able to help clients in accessing the utility incentives that are available and sort of working you through that journey. Now, how does the Home Energy Loan Program work? Well, we say a loan, but it's not quite a loan. It's actually a local improvement charge. And this local improvement charge is essentially repayable through the property tax system. So once you've done all the work, after a number of months, it goes to council, we create a bylaw for your home, and you start paying us back over time. Now, the other benefit of this program is you can repay the city back at any time without penalty, or if the home is sold, the payments can actually be assumed by the new owners. And we've had this happen in many cases. It could be a selling feature. I've upgraded my home and selling it on, you transfer the payments. What can we cover through this? Well, we can cover basically anything that would make your home more energy efficient, water efficient, etc. So high efficiency furnaces, boilers, water heaters, air conditioners, drain heat recovery systems, heat recovery or ventilators. We can do toilets, basement, attic insulation, and wall insulation. And we can also do the renewables, which is, again, things a lot of people are very excited about. So we can do solar PV, we can do solar hot water, we can do geothermal. And as of last year, we can actually do EV chargers, level 2 or above, battery storage technology like, Powerwalls. And the nice thing, these costs are still relatively, they're coming down, as I said, dramatically. But what we're able to do with select technologies, including air source heat pumps, is amortize that payment over 20 years. So it makes those monthly payments a lot cheaper. What have people told us about a home energy loan program? Well, improved comfort is one of the biggest things we hear, above and beyond the fact that people are saving money, which varies depending, again, on the age of the home and what is done. Improved comfort is massive. The quality, the air quality, the sound quality of the home. And we've also had, value improvements. One client told us that their bank actually appraised their home 6% higher in value as a result of this. The other great thing about these programs is this is hyper-local economic development. You're not importing from all around the world. It's local contractors. To a large extent, you can get local materials. And we're also seeing substantial reductions in GHGs. I'm going to wrap up very shortly so we can have a bit of a discussion. So I'll just a couple of slides more. Again, we have flexible terms, 5, 10, 15-year terms. Interest rates are a little high this year. As everyone knows, COVID has driven interest rates down. So we're expecting those rates will drop quite dramatically next year. The other thing we're able to do with the program is advance people up to 30% of the costs to get you starting and pay your contractors. And the timelines vary. Simple projects can take 4 weeks from beginning to end, while other renovations can take 18 months. So again, it's very important to have that plan. In so much as you can stack the incentives and rebates from utilities, we also allow that to do with the city's grant program for the basement flood subsidy program, which will provide up to $3,400 for property. So if you're insulating your basement, this is a great thing to combine at a time and save yourself a significant amount of money. And in the event of a flood, save yourself a wrecked basement. One of the last things I think I'll mention, and we're quite excited about, is we recently applied to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for a chunk of change to improve our program. We've learned a lot of things over the last 4 years of the program, and we really want to try to get it to scale now. We're actually doing this in collaboration. I believe 14 other municipalities across the country, 7 in Ontario, have applied to the program. And we're looking for capital from FCM as well as granting monies. So what will we be doing? We'll be focusing on improved partnerships and impacts. So really, the project Paul mentioned is a great one. Identifying those community organizations that are looking to retrofit at scale. We really want to improve the equity impacts of the program. We want to support deeper retrofits by providing rebates and incentives. And we just want to make the process easier for homeowners because it can be a little complicated to do that. So on our end, we want to try to make it a little simpler. I've talked everyone's ear off, so I'll leave it there. And thank you for your time. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself or our team, and we're happy to get back to you. So thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you, Stuart. That was fascinating and an amazing amount of very exciting information. Clearly, the big message I derive from this is, if you're thinking about doing something, now's the time. There's lots of support and lots of ways you can get help. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
We're now ready to move to the next phase of our panel tonight, which is our question and answer session. So we'll move to full panel mode, and if the other panel members can turn on your screens, turn on your cameras, so we're all here. I'm happy to say we've already got a lot of questions from our audience. There's been quite a response here. And I'm going to be kind of collating the questions and grouping them in various ways. So the first question actually is one that's kind of just comes directly off what you were saying, Stuart. And that is, I was totally wowed by the amount of information that you provided. I expected a lot of other people were too, but they probably only got down a tiny fraction of it. And I'm guessing, this is not a question, but I think it's a question that we would hear. Is there a place that someone could go and get more or less everything that you just said in some available or digestible form? Because there's so much there. Those are things that one wants to pore over and follow up on. And I'm wondering how you can do that in an easy way.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and there is a lot. Even for myself, I have a background in architecture, spent a lot of time working on in this sort of field, and it's still overwhelming. And I think that was the real driver behind setting up the Better Homes TO website. And again, we're happy to share the link. What we want to do there is really try to demystify this. So for every single type of upgrade or improvement there is, we've created these cards that are digital and printable and all that sort of thing. And it really breaks it down. So what is this technology? In really simple terms, we had a plain language sort of expert on our staff really look at that. What does this thing do? How is it going to improve your home? And what does it, a lot of people say, well, what does it cost? So we've got the cost range in there as well. The other thing, again, is we try to demystify what is the EnerGuide home audit? How do you go about doing it? And we try to lay out some of the steps too, in terms of, thinking through a renovation. We've got some good resources there as well. The other thing is we're about to, in the new year, we'll be sort of embarking on refreshing a lot of that material. So if there's something there you don't see, we would love to hear from you and tell us, and we'll go out and we'll try to develop those resources.
That's great. That sounds very, very useful. Well, my next question is based on several that we have here, having to do with insulation. And this is one for you, Paul, and for Greg, to pick up as you wish. And first, it's about what about all of us who have these older double brick homes? What if we add fiberglass insulation and a vapor barrier, as some people have done? One of our viewers says he read that this will cause bricks to freeze and thaw and degrade. Is there a trade-off there, or how do you deal with that? And so that's part A of a question that will go a little further on insulation in a minute. But maybe someone would like to pick that part up.
Sure, I'll take that one because that's a very practical one, and I've learned enough building science to answer this one. But if I get anything wrong, Greg, correct me, please. Yeah, so definitely in these double brick homes, you can over insulate from the interior. That is absolutely true. This is where you need to do energy modeling on the proposed solution to the interior, so that you allow enough heat to get to the bricks so that the bricks and the mortar don't freeze. Because in our Novembers and Decembers, the bricks and the mortar are kind of like sponges. They load up on a lot of water, a lot of moisture in November and December. And then in our snapping cold Januaries and Februaries, they freeze. And when water freezes, it expands and that cracks the mortar. And to save a few dollars on energy through the insulation, you can end up damaging the structure of your house. So that's not a good trade-off. It's actually much better to insulate the exterior of the brick. You cannot over insulate the exterior. And then you also get the benefit of that mass of the brick on the inside. It retains a lot of heat. It acts as what we call a thermal mass. So insulating the exterior is a much better thing to do. And yet I can then hear everybody in Toronto cry, oh, but I love my bricks. I have to keep my bricks. The bricks are so beautiful. There's another trade-off there. So it's one or the other. That's the best I can do. Anything to add to that, Greg?
I would only say that managing bulk water is super important. So, just like you wouldn't go out on a rainy day with sandals on a cold rainy day and walk around in the muck. Same thing, you put your boots on. So your foundation, if you're renovating and you're spending money on your house, your eaves troughs should all be draining rainwater away from the foundation. The grade all around your house should be sloped so that you're exporting the water away from the house. And yeah, your foundation ideally would be waterproofed and waterproofed from the outside. There are methods for waterproofing on the inside, but again, that's kind of like having water inside your boot. And it's just all of that water just kind of wicks up the wall and moves up the wall. So really, your first line of defense in all of this is really to protect the structure by managing water before it becomes an issue. So I think I would just wanted to add that, Paul.
Okay, and then just sticking with that insulation question for a moment, one viewer asks, Greg, did you say that cellulose insulation is the only insulation recommended in Canada for retrofits? Is that correct?
Yeah, so in a retrofit situation where you're not tearing down lath and plaster, in a flat roof, Enercan tacitly approved dense packing cellulose in those attics. And cellulose is a pretty versatile product. But yeah, as a retrofit material, if the cavity is big and open and accessible, and you have a good cellulose installer, that's part of the problem in Canada. We don't have the talent that they have in the States. See, in the United States, ironically, since the 80s, they've been funding home weatherization from the federal government since the 1980s, and it's been consistently done. So what this has led is there are whole groups that know how to retrofit houses. In Canada, the government flips the switch on, saying, yeah, we're doing energy audits now. They switch it off. Everyone's laid off and is selling their blower door. They switch it on. Everyone's buying blower doors and learning how. So it's meant to, it's got, we've really lurched in Canada to the point where we don't have the talent pool, but Paul kind of alluded, and that was really, Paul, that was thanks for pointing that out, is just the sheer number of houses that need to be renovated per day. That was like, man, that's a lot of labor. We could put a lot of people to work. So cellulose is a great material. You can use spray foam if you're going to gut the place. I think by and large, a lot of high performance builders and or designers are definitely pushing to move away from carbon intensive materials like or oil based materials like spray foam and going to more benign products like cellulose, possibly Roxol, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, yes, you can use cellulose in a retrofit application, and it works quite well. But you need to find a good installer, and they're hard to find because you need to get that density up to 3.5 pounds per cubic foot. So it's a lot of density, and it needs to be uniformly covered.
And I have a couple of questions relating to other materials, I think probably not cellulose, but that might be used. And it has to do with thinking not just about how effective they are to do their job, but what about the total life cycle of these materials? Or if they are sourced from somewhere outside Canada, then what about the total embodied cost in bringing them? Is that part of the analysis that people in this field are bringing to bear on building a home that's truly going to be sustainable in every way?
Yeah, I mean, it is something that a lot of architects, designers, they are aware of it. Or I shouldn't say a lot of them. In fact, Paul's kind of the exception here. You know, there's a few boutique architecture firms that are really have just you know they're really heads above the rest, and they they grapple with making these painful decisions, helping their client make these painful decisions, and yeah, it's not straightforward. But Paul, Paul Stewart, I saw Stewart nodding. You guys probably have a more straightforward answer on this.
I'm not sure if it's more straightforward, but one of my favorite products right now for insulation is wood fiber insulation, and what bothers me about that is that the best wood fiber insulation that we can get has to come from Germany. And this just strikes me as absolutely ridiculous when we live in a country that has, more trees than, well, we probably have more lakes than trees, but we have more trees than most anybody else in the world other than perhaps Russia. And yet we don't have a wood fiber insulation industry here. Once upon a time, we had a very robust timber industry from coast to coast. It was decided by people long before any of us were alive that the western half of the country would produce structural lumber, and that the eastern half of the country would be dedicated to making pulp and paper, mostly for the voracious newspaper industry all around the world. Well, we all now know that there's not a voracious newspaper industry. And so we're actually, losing that ready supply of cellulose insulation because we don't have a lot of newspapers to recycle. But we have now all these shuttered pulp and paper plants. And I just think, why is not Eastern Canada just running at the idea of converting these plants into wood fiber insulation factories? Another huge opportunity for this country that nobody's paying attention to. So those are the kind of things that keep me awake at night. And Stuart, over to you.
Yeah, no, I think it's the key point there, I think, is opportunity, right? Like there's so many products, there's so many ways to produce these locally. And I think that's a lot of what the discussion is now around, COVID recovery is how do we make it clean and how do we make it green and how do we ensure it's climate aligned? And, these are some of the very pertinent things I think, we're speaking to. How could we start producing air source heat pumps at scale? Or how do we produce cellulose at scale? I think one of the key things too is we need people to know that there are different options out there. And I think, we need more people to know what an air source heat pump is. So the default isn't necessarily one technology or the other. But there is a lot to understand. But I think that's, again, one of the real opportunity is we can go 25 minus or plus on the homes, but Paul's exactly right. Like, what an incredible opportunity for laborers and skilled trades and manufacturers and producers of materials for the next 40 years. And we have to remember, once we've retrofitted a home, say in 2030, in 10 years, or 20 years, they'll be due for their next big renovation. And I think that gets to the critical importance of maintenance, which isn't a very exciting thing, but maintaining a home is one of the biggest things you can do for climate action is just maintain your home. Do it first with the cheap and the cheerful, and when that opportunity comes, you really have to do the big stuff. Just really think about the guts of your home.
Actually, I'd love to follow up on that. I wonder if any of you think that when a home is really properly renovated to make it highly energy efficient, whether it requires, as a result, whether it would require less maintenance than the same home might before all that work was done. In other words, certainly maintenance costs are an issue. Not only the cost of a monetary issue, but also in the end an energy and a materials issue too. So if a home is built in a way that will last for 50 to 100 years without significant maintenance. That would be a big advantage over one that requires substantial maintenance every 20 years. How does the current standard for highly efficient homes relate to that?
Okay, I'll take a crack at that one. There's not really a standard for durability of high efficiency homes. However, the two ideas do go hand in hand. I think whenever I'm promoting materials for somebody who's doing a deep energy retrofit, we are promoting materials that are durable. We are promoting materials that have a very long life cycle. As well as then the technology that goes in the home. Buy the best quality that you can buy the most durable so that it does last. And I think when you get a well sealed envelope on the house to deal with the bulk water, as Greg mentioned, to deal with even insect infestation. I mean, there's another thing that very few people think about, but it's important from a longevity point of view. So you want to just make sure that all those little destructive things like water, like moist air, like insects, make sure that they're not getting into the envelope of your home. That's where a lot of the maintenance comes from. A lot comes from water getting in when you don't want it to, and then you have rot and mold and things like that. So when you deal with all that and think about all of that from the outside, I think of all retrofits from the outside inwards. So we start with the unsexy stuff. Yes, Stuart, we will make insulation sexy. I promise you. We're going to do this. But you start with that sort of thing, and then you ultimately get to the shiny technical stuff, that runs as well as any Apple product. We'll eventually get there, but that shiny tech is the dessert, and you've got to eat your deep green vegetables first before you get to the dessert. So deal with the insulation and the air sealing first, and I think that will go a long way to the durability.
Paul, once you've done your air sealing, is that something that will stand up over the long haul?
Again, if you use proper materials and you do the proper preparatory work, so like the old adage of painting is 95% prep and 5% putting paint on the wall. So don't rush to put the paint on the wall. Do the prep work behind the caulking first. Then the caulking has the support it needs. And of course, then go around and look at that caulking every year in about September and check it out, poke at it, basically treat your house like your dental hygienist treats your teeth and your gums. You got to go around and poke at it every now and then and make sure everything's healthy. Same idea.
I think it's a great analogy, actually.
I like the analogy, but it's also true that many of us avoid going to the dentist. So
yes,
there's an analogy there too.
As many of us avoid getting on a ladder and going up and checking the caulking around that third floor window.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to take our discussion in a slightly different direction now. We've had a couple of questions about radiators, and those of us, including me, who have homes with radiators often feel a bit left out of some the talk about alternative ways of heating our home, about heat pumps, air source heat pumps, and things like that. And one of our viewers asked the question, what about solar hot water heating as a way of heating radiators, perhaps, and using the sun's energy, at least to reduce the cost of heating by that means? Or are there other ways of working with homes that are already set up for radiant water circulating radiant heat?
That's an interesting question. I know that first of all, Paul, the people with radiators have an easy out when they get called for duct cleaning.
Yeah.
Well, do you need your ducts cleaned? Well, no, I don't have any ducts. I have a boiler, so you can hang up guilt-free. But the truth is that solar energy on a roof, if I was to look at that real estate and think about what is the most efficient way to deal with that energy or collect that energy, would be with photovoltaic. And really, photovoltaic and solar roof panels are really the last, that's right at the tippy top of our pyramid of upgrades when we think about things. But I would say that you should go for quality, you should go for flexibility, and go with an electric system, simply because a lot of water systems, you know, I remember, you know, them being put up in the 2000s, and they're actually coming down now. They're coming off of roofs. Water systems are they're complicated mechanically. You produce too much water in certain seasons. You have to dump that load. You have to manage it, and people don't want to, you know, people don't want to manage these kinds of complicated systems. But in a nutshell, it's probably not the best thing for people to focus their money on, using that solar energy. It works great for a pool and fantastic for a pool heater, but not a lot of us have pools.
And anything that you can offer us who have homes with heated by radiators. We're looking for a strategy, for example, to go off gas heating, to take up, to start using an air source heat pump or a set of heat pumps. Would there be a way to do that as a supplement to what our current boiler system, heat provided by our boiler system, so as to reduce the expenses and the use of gas?
You know, boiler systems and radiant hydronics, they tend to be complicated mechanically, and there's a way to do it, yes. And but they're finicky to set up. I don't know what your experience is, Paul, but in my experience, I've had so many people with you know, ground source heat pumps, water-based systems that were just really didn't perform well in the end.
Yeah, what we've started doing on an experimental basis, and very much with the full knowledge consent of the homeowners who are willing to do this experiment, they're looking to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by putting in a central air source heat pump that comes through ductwork in the attic, which is questionable at times. It has to be dealt with very, very carefully, having ductwork in the attic, and then feeds the upper floor rooms. And so primarily they put in that air source heat pump as air conditioner in the summer. That's its primary purpose. And then they would use their radiators in the winter. But because the air source heat pump will also do heat quite effectively down to -5, even -10, they can then still use the air source heat pump when the electricity is less expensive, because they're using it more efficiently down to those temperatures. And then they have an interlock system that will then, when the temperature gets below a certain point, it will send the signal to the gas boiler to then fire up the radiator system. That work is, as I say, is a little bit experimental at this stage, to see if the savings are really there, or if the complication of the system doesn't just make it useless. So I'm sure I can see Greg's expressions going, oh yeah, that just sounds like a nightmare.
You need the right mechanical designer, and more importantly, you need the right mechanical installer, because it's one thing to have the specification written. You need somebody to actually follow that specification and make sure that the mechanical systems are actually working according to plan.
Yeah, and the people that we're doing this with are mechanically minded themselves, and they're fully participatory in the experiment. So sorry, Stuart.
No, not at all. I think it's a really good point you guys are making, and what we see horror stories, as I'm sure you guys have as well, of people who haven't, you know, again, another analogy is, you know, measure twice, cut once. And I think the same could be said, you know, review twice, sign once with a contractor, make sure that, that whoever's doing the work really knows what they're doing, and I think there's some great resources about asking the right questions and getting those 3 quotes. And it takes a little more time, that part of the process, but finding a professional who really knows what they're doing and takes great pride in their work is really important when it comes to this stuff, because, you don't want to go ahead and get all this work done and then, end up with mold issues, or, again, they've somehow infiltrating water into your home. So it's just really important. We hear horror stories from the clients who have gone through the help program, and now they come to us and they want to fix a problem. And we said, okay, well, have you looked at the contractors? And that's what we really encourage. Just, get 3 quotes, quality, best you can afford, makes a huge difference. It will save you so many problems in the long run.
Stuart, that seems to me an incredibly important point. I'm very glad that you brought it up. And I have to say that it resonates with some of the experience that I've had talking with people in our community who've either done something and then gotten into trouble with it, or people who are just reticent about getting into this at all, because it seems as though there are so many ways you could go wrong. And how can you really be sure that the contractor you've got is someone who understands how to do everything? I have heard it said that you can have excellent materials and top-rate triple glaze insulation windows and other materials as part of your HVAC system, but if they are not properly installed, they will not perform anywhere near what they're specified to do, and to a sizable extent, you may even have wasted your money. So I think this puts people off, and I'm just wondering whether there's anything, whether you see either in the city's current programs or in anything envisioned for the future, a way of giving people some kind of reassurance, a sort of someone like a resident expert. I've heard the word concierge used, someone who can say, well, here's what you've got, and here's how to know that you've got someone who can do this. Or let me just put it another way. What about a certification for each of these kinds of installation specialties, so that they are only eligible for rebates if they have been installed by someone who is duly qualified and signs off on it? I'm putting this because I feel it may actually be one of the significant roadblocks to everything we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things to unpack there, and I think Paul or Greg could definitely jump in there as well. I think for one thing, we have a shortage of skilled trades. We have a shortage of people who understand what net zero means, what high quality insulation means, how properly putting in a window and how to do it, eliminating thermal bridges, all of these sort of issues. So I think we definitely need investments in training. I think that's a huge opportunity because people are looking for this. Like you say, there is a deficit. One of the things, I think with the utility program, we refer to this list because it's been vetted by Enbridge. When a certified energy auditor comes out to your home, and once they've gone through this vetting process, they're signing off on those things. And, the training is very good. It's, federal standards, very hard to pass exam. And, that's, again, I think another reason we sort of recommend home energy audits. I think the other thing we're looking into really is this idea of an energy coach or an energy concierge. So we've applied for some funding from the Federation Committee of Municipalities as a way of sort of souping up our program. So, currently a lot of the people on our team can guide people through the process of getting financing and directing them to incentives. What we want to provide is a little bit of value add. So ideally, we would like to hire someone to have on staff who is a technical expert, sort of an energy advisor, who has the technical credentials. And ideally, we want to be able to offer a free service to people. So people could phone in and say, hey, I'm looking to do this. Can you advise me? And the city is not going to be recommending particular contractors or products. So, we want to take a very third-party perspective on this, but we do want to give people a little more information to start that. And I've heard a lot of other, business ideas and thinking about that. is that how do we provide people that extra support? You know, Paul or Greg, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, in the pocket, I've been voluntold that I'm going to be acting as the retrofit coach in the pocket, which is a little bit daunting because, you know, I don't know whether I'll get to the point where my neighbors love me or hate me. Mm-hmm. It really could go either way. But I think that if you know, we have to try doing this. This is part of the community spirit. We have to be part of the experiment on this. And all the learnings that I'm going to gather by being the retrofit coach, you know, when the city does hire somebody, I would be very happy to sit down with that person and say, right, okay, now these are the things I learned. This is what you're going to find out there. These are maybe some of the pitfalls. So we're certainly trying to help.
I was going to add, Stuart, simply that you know, the passive house methodology of designing and really would almost preclude a lot of radiant kind of like big radiant structures like radiant in floor and or radiators, classic cast iron radiators, simply because the BTUs per square foot or square meter area of that radiator is too high, and you're basically cooking people out of their homes. So so you can design these problems out of the you know yeah, basically by design a good home should probably not have a radiator in it, not at least not that size and shape. There might be a smaller radiator that puts out just the right, as Paul says, you know, just a sipping amount of it, you know, a small amount of energy. So and the good news is that, you know, I when I was doing home energy audits, I think maybe 10% of the houses, if that, were boilers. So
oh, that's interesting. Those of us living in quite pretty old neighborhoods, it seems like everybody's got boilers, but maybe that's a local illusion.
well, based on my experience, I would say that boilers are certainly it does go on. You know, the older neighborhoods of Toronto, the Rosedales, you know, the you know, some certain parts of High Park, you know, the Annex, some of these old houses, a lot of these old houses do have a higher percentage of boilers. You know, Riverdale, but yeah, by and large, most houses are forced air.
Right, right. Good. Well, this has been a fascinating and very valuable way, I think, to end what's been a really lively and incredibly informative conversation. So I see we've already run well past our 90 minutes, and that's a sign that there's lots of stuff going on here. And I have to say, we haven't really fully answered all the questions that we've gotten, but this is a pretty representative sampling. So I want to offer a very big thanks to all of you for what you've given us tonight and your expertise and knowledge and information. And also a big thanks to our audience for submitting such interesting and important questions. By the way, I wanted to mention to everyone that if you're wondering how to track down all those programs and websites mentioned by our panelists, don't worry about it. We've summed them all up in an email that will be on its way to you shortly. Now, I'm not certain whether we've got everything that you mentioned, Stuart, in that email. I know you sent something to us, but if we need to supplement that, we can do so.
Of course, no problem.
Sorry?
Of course, no problem.
Okay, that's great. Now, I also wanted to tell our viewers that if you've been listening to all this and you're keen to get going, and you like the idea of joining up with others involved in home energy retrofits, we've included a form in this email we'll send you that you can fill out and that will help you get connected. So on behalf of EcoFair Toronto, I'd like to thank all the event organizers, the presenters, the behind the scenes volunteers who've made today's event such a great success. And I'd like to thank all of you for participating. If you enjoyed our panel, remember, this is just one of several Waste Not events at the EcoFair. Be sure to take in the screening of Microplastic Madness, running tomorrow through Sunday, followed by a discussion of the film on Sunday at 4 p.m. And don't miss our sustainable textile teach-in starting at 2 p.m. on Saturday. We'd also love to have your feedback, so please take a moment to share your thoughts. A link to our short and easy EcoFair survey is on the chat. Everyone's encouraged to fill it out, audience, presenters, and all you volunteers. Finally, to everyone, don't forget to visit the EcoFair website, which is just chock full of all kinds of interesting things. If you go, you'll be able to explore the other exciting workshops, webinars, and films in the schedule, as well as eco tours you can take in neighborhoods across the city. While you're there, be sure to take in the exhibitor showcase with its 40 green businesses and community groups, and also check out the cool family-friendly activities in the Fun and Games tab. We hope you've enjoyed this event and that you'll be back for more. You'll find it all at ecofairtoronto.org. Good night, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you all.
Bye.
Good night.